So in general, if we want to specify and standardize the way we code, so what do we follow? We use the camel case in Java and JavaScript, which means if we need to define a variable, we can certainly do it with underscore and other things. So one is we can either define it like this, we can define like this, we can define like this, right? These all are possible combination of defining a variable. So what works for you is completely fine. Usually when it is a local variable, I generally use this pattern, and if it is a global variable, I use this pattern. For defining a method, I use the camel case, something like this. All right, so that is like different from person to person, but this is all it takes when we are talking about the JavaScript. Now let's make this a little more complex. So what we can do is we can follow this exercise. Okay, let's talk about ECMA 2015. So ECMA 2015 introduced two important new JavaScript keywords. One is let and const. These two keywords provide block scope variables and constant in JavaScript. Because before ES 2015, JavaScript had only two type of scope, global and function scope. So what I'm talking about global scope, here is one example. This is one example, right? What it says, this is your heading, this is your body, this is your PID demo, and what it says, we are defining a variable name car name and we are assigning its value to Volvo. Then we are calling my function. This function is given here. What this function does, this function takes your inner HTML and I can display car name. So from where this car name is coming from, this car name is coming from this variable, right? To be able to show this how it is working on the browser, we can see that this is coming from the global scope. So anything which is outside the function is called as global scope. Whereas if we need to make this a function scope, what it will be? Can anyone please tell me? We say that this car name is not Volvo, this is XUV. Let's see what it prints, right? So it has overridden the value of car name. This has taken the new value. Are you fine with this approach? Because what it does, it took out the value of, and again, like if we use another function and here we use another ID, it's called demo1, and we say that demo1 is going to be what it will print on the second line of it. Any guesses? What should it print? If this is the program, what should it print on this one?
XUV only, sir.
Right, because it has taken up this variable which was replaced by it. So what we did is we took out the variable from this place and we updated its value in the my function. But what if this function is called earlier here? Right, so the sequence of program, like first we are calling my function 1, which is taking the value of immediately this car name. Whereas in the second one, what we did is we called this function after my function 1. So this has not replaced the variable value of car name. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now what is JavaScript block scope? Variable declared with var keyword cannot have block scope. Variables declared inside a block can be accessed from outside the block as well. So that is what is happening. Before ES 2015, JavaScript did not have the block scope. Variable declared with let keyword can have a block scope. So what will happen if we say this is let, and then what will happen if we say this now? Any changes will be done in the output? No, right? But what if we say this as variable and then this as let? What will be the output? Did you see the difference?
Yes.
Right, so what it does, it has created a local copy of it which is not actually overriding the value of this car name. Is this clear? So this is function level scope. Now what is allowed and what is not allowed? Let me show you some examples here. So if we declare variable x in the outer scope and then we are changing it, this is not allowed. Whereas if we use the variable within this is allowed, and this is not allowed with some other variables if we're talking about redeclaring, right? Because what we are doing is redeclaring is creating another copy of this variable. And what is allowed if we use this kind of a format? So what we did in another example, we created variable and then we created the local copy with let variable, which is ideally, if we go through the ECMA 2015 scripting, it is not allowed. So first what we should have done, we should have created the variable with let and then should replace its value to make it the function scope variable, right? Or the best example to use is if you are using let, so this should be the right way to first declare it at the global scope and then changing its function scope all the time. Okay, let's do one thing. I would request you guys to take 5 minutes of time. Yeah.
Sir, does it mean that we have to always use let instead of where?
That depends. If your use case suggests that you need to use the global and function level scope, that you should definitely use this let. And if it is like you are just using the variables, so variables are a little lightweight in terms of when they load, because it is not it is not actually this let is more useful when you want to demarcate between the global and function level scope. So depending on what use case you are attempting to, if it says that you need to use it at the function level as well, so always go for let. So let's do one exercise. Let's create the same program that I did and then use the difference how the where and let behaving in your program. So what you can do is you can take two variables, one is where, another one is let,